Hey, interwebs, welcome back. MoralGamer here, and we're going to take a look at something retro gaming related. And yes, I thought a while back I had my Retron 3. Retron 3! Great system and everything for playing retro games. Especially when I want to play my NES, Super NES, and Mega Drive. Or Genesis, if you like me stateside. But what happens when you want something that's a little bit better and more like the Cadillac? Enter the Retron 5. Yep, Retron 5. Is this actually going to be a good system? Is this something that you should spend your money on? Let's find out. So the Retron 5, let's compare it to a Retron 3. Unlike previous, the Retron 5 boasts, I don't know why it says 5, but this is actually more like the Retron 7. This thing plays a whole heck of a lot more games than this thing ever did. I mean, here you're stuck with the Genesis, Super Nintendo. And by the way, Retron 3, this was only composite cables. Let's put this one aside here. And we're going to look at the Retron 5 here. So, Retron 5 has, boasts 5, but no, it plays a lot more than that. So up here, you're going to have your Genesis, Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo, and Famicom. I know, Nintendo and Famicom are the same thing, but the slots are actually different because they had different layouts. Let me see if I can't give you a close-up up there on these two ports. But yeah, so flip it to the front, and what do we have? We've got a Game Boy slot, huh? Where is it? Right there. There we go. Game Boy slot. And the Game Boy slot allows you to play Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. So we're talking, in addition to your NES, Super NES, Mega Drive, Genesis, you're talking Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, and Game Boy Color. So that technically would make this the Retron 6. All right? Now, I like this. I actually do like this. And I'm going to tell you off the bat, this has actually been a decent system. The casing, I will start off, though, when you're looking at the build, casing up here feels a bit flimsy. I mean, it's sturdier. It feels like it's harder plastic on the bottom. But if I was to drop this, I was like, whoop, I have a suspicion that this actually would crack really easily. Versus like my Retron 3 here, this whole case here, light plastic, feels very flimsy. This one does. So in some respects, they've made this more durable, and in some respects, not as sound. So go to the back here, and in the back you have, right here, you've got your power cord. You've got a USB. Now the USB, it goes mini to micro, and you charge the controllers off a micro USB, but it goes mini into here, which I don't get it. Those cords are available anywhere. Are you trying to standardize it or something? I don't know. HDMI slot, and then I actually had a SD card in there. SD card is great if you want to put your game saves on there, if you want to put anything else on there. So that actually is pretty cool. And let's go. Either side has the same ports here. And so they come with these rubberized covers, but here I got my NES, got my Genesis, and my Super Nintendo. And the thing I don't like is that, well, the Super Nintendo and Genesis are easy to put back in, easier. The NES ones have this little rubber right there. I don't know if you can see. I'll stick it up there. So when I'm putting these back in to try and protect this from dust, it still sticks out, and it's actually harder to put this back in. And still sticks up a little bit. It's harder to put that back in. So this is the one, and I'll put them up there so you can see better. But this right here sticks out. This one was removed. This one's very flush. This one's flush, and that is, in my opinion, I wish this was much easier to put back together. So this is the console. Nice because if you have any peripherals, you want to use U-Force, Power Glove, whatever, you can use those with this. You've got the controller ports in there. Now, I'm not saying you can use them with your TV, because that's a different story. Zapper, not going to work. HDMI out, guys. HDMI does not support the same output that we needed for the Zapper back in the day. And CRT TVs don't support HDMI. But now let's look at the controller. And the controller, by the way, controller fits right there. It's kind of like they're showcasing their controller. Woohoo! Right? Controller on the top has a home button. And it's got a bunch of action buttons right here. 6 layout. This is comfortable if you want to play Genesis, because it's got, you know, it's got Genesis like on the facepad, right? And you put your mode up here, right? Then it's got shoulder buttons up here, so total 8 buttons so far. And then it's got your start and select, and then home. Overall, I mean, it's a square controller with the little ledging like this. You know, the ledging makes it feel more comfortable. It fits in your hand nicely, which is great. The thing I don't like is that this actually has a raised joystick there. Raised joystick right there. Oh, like I said, I'll be putting everything up there so you can see a little easier, but this raised joystick sucks because you have to get used to having a direction pad now. And if you listen, microphone's up there, by the way, but if you listen, everything clicks. And because everything clicks, you know, it just seems to me, my wife said, sounds like you're playing with a mouse. You know, in some degree, I actually agree with her. It clicks like a mouse, and it's like, why did you guys do that? That feels cheap. The controller itself feels fairly sturdy, but, you know, the clicking makes me wonder, feels very cheap. This is a Bluetooth controller, by the way, and I have not found a way, it's got this little H here, but I haven't found a way to get that open yet, but, I mean, at this point, there's no way to replace the batteries. So, this is a $40 to $50 control that every time one of these dies, you either have to keep it plugged in all the time, or you have to get a new controller. Thankfully, I have 2. Like PlayStation, they've got the 4 lights on the bottom, 4 indicator lights. So let me see if I can get them blinking. There you go. And these indicator lights tell you which player you are. So you can be player 1, 2, 3, or 4. Doesn't support more than 4 controllers, although the Sega Genesis did allow you to have 8 players in some games. Woohoo! Cool. Cool. I mean, I really don't have much complaint. Now, interesting enough, I haven't figured out what this button does. But this button right here says it saves a snapshot. Snapshots are like, remember emulation days? Because this whole console is basically an emulator. And emulation days, you could basically save your state and then go back to that state. And so if you're playing a game like Ninja Turtles, which did not have a save point, you could basically just save your state and continue the game at a later point in time from where you left off. That's beautiful. That actually is beautiful, especially since most older games didn't have the backup battery. And if you're playing a game like if you have Pokemon on Game Boy Advance, which the Game Boy Advance ones, the batteries are notorious for dying, then at that point in time, you could actually use your Retron save state to continue your game in Pokemon. And it will actually pull your save state from the cart into the Retron, which is cool. Loving that. So save state button, home button basically brings you back to the Retron menu, and I have no clue what this is. It doesn't seem to serve any function at all. At least none that I've found at this point. So, let's talk about the Retron as a console. Okay? The menus are interesting, because the Retron only allows you to have one game at a time. So if you have a Famicom game or an NES game or a Game Boy game in there, no matter what you have, you can only have one cartridge versus, again, my Retron 3. This was beautiful because I could load her up. Fully loaded, my Retron always stayed. It would have a NES game in there, usually Super Mario All-Stars for Super Nintendo, and then on Genesis, probably Balls. Like playing Balls. And I could just switch between them with this little knob on the front there, right? It's all software based in the Retron 5. And given that it's software based, for some reason, it will detect that you have multiple cartridges and say, nope, you can't do this, guys. Can't do this. I don't like that about this console. When you're loading up a game, and maybe it's a good time to go to some of the game footage here. When you put a game in the cartridge slot, it actually downloads a dump of the ISO to the system in like RAM. So the game system itself actually downloads the ISO to it. No, you cannot save. You can probably hack it if you wanted to export your own ROM images, but no, you can't actually create your own dumps or whatnot from this. And I haven't found any way to, on the SD card, just download a whole bunch of ROMs and play them directly from the SD card. I haven't found that capability yet. There are people talking about hacking their Retrons and doing it. You know, I don't support illegal emulation, so hey, if you do find a way, you'd find a way. Hey, that's up to you if you want to post or not. I like how this handles most games. From my library, I tried quite a few titles here, and as you can see, most of them are playing as if I'm on the original system. Beautiful, wonderful, no issues there.
Okay, so here I'm doing a hands-on with Corvette here, and notice this, all you're seeing right here is when I actually put the game in and I let it not recognize the cartridge. So at this point, this is an unrecognized cartridge, and this is vastly unplayable. And I find that actually, if the system fails to recognize the cartridge at all, you're oftentimes going to get this right here. So it's a better idea to clean your cartridges and whatnot and make sure they're properly situated in there. You can blow on a few times. I know it's bad for the cartridges, but somehow it seems to work, right? So I actually removed the cartridge here and put it back in, got it clean and put it in, got recognized by the system, which is important. And so starting off my race, everything looks great until, okay, what's going on here? Oh my gosh, if I'm the only person seeing this, I want to know who slipped what in my food. Because this is, oh my gosh, what's going on? No. I mean, this is just horrible. This is not only going to hurt your eyes, but this is going to seriously screw with you. And I wouldn't play this. I wouldn't play this. This cartridge works great on my GameCube with the Game Boy Advance player, but even works on my DS. So let's move on to the next one. So here I'm loving myself some Metroid, and this Metroid 2 Return to Samus Game Boy game, and you can see it's working. This actually is before I found out that you can stretch the imagery. So it is boxed, which I'm not a very big fan of the boxed. I like it to stretch out, fill my whole TV. But the game's running smooth. I mean, no issues here. The controller makes it actually kind of hard for me. It's taken a little bit to get used to, but still, and I know people say don't blame the controller. You play with this controller, you will understand. But still, works fairly well. Let's move on. Now, I don't know what it is about Game Boy Color games, but Game Boy Color games always look to me like the games that really fail. It's like they slacked color over a Game Boy game and said, here we go. Not even NES quality in many cases for most of them. But this is Dinosaur, and as you can see, it's running well. If you were to play this on a Game Boy Color, this is about what you'd get. So the Retron is doing a great job of making this one work. And I don't have very many Game Boy Color games because honestly the best Game Boy games were either classic Game Boy or Game Boy Advance. So speaking of which, have to give you guys a little shot of Tekken Advanced. Runs very well here. Decent game. We have our reviews on it, but still. This is on the Retron, so I'm impressed so far. Now let's get some Super Nintendo action in there. And this is Super Mario All-Stars. I know it's technically a Nintendo game on a Super Nintendo, but still a viable good test here because it's Super Nintendo. It's working. I have no controller issues. The raised joystick is still taking a bit for me to get used to, but I'm able to run the game. Heck, this just feels like I'm still playing on a Super Nintendo, at least visually and whatnot. No complaints here that I could really muster. Everything looks great. So again, here you can see me playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter, and surprisingly, the controller was very good for fighting games. I mean, it works. I can't explain it, but it just works. I mean, I've got the comfortability in my hand to play, and for rolling motions and stuff like that, even when I have to like charge back, go forward, it just works. So I was surprised that this was the better play experience than like your standard game. Normally it's the other way around, that a controller doesn't work very well for fighting games, but of course you can see that the aspect ratio here is still the 3:4 more so. Um, it's not the full uh, it's not the full 720p, so you're not getting the 9:16. C'est la vie. That's something that I found out later in the game. So, yep. Let's move on. Now, X-Men was the game that I had the most issue with because it was actually hard to get the control and whatnot. By the way, the haze here, this is actually the level. It's doing a decent job, especially if you look at where it says player 1 and the life gauge. There's no haze there. Um, that's just, this is a snow level. It's the first level of X-Men, Clone Wars on Sega Genesis. And it's responsive. It's doing what it needs to do. Even on the Bluetooth controller, I don't feel like I'm losing control. But again, recentering the stick and being able to duck, that still is problematic for me because I'm not able to duck when I want to or point up when I want to. But the left and right are responsive, so hey. And yes, I know people say Symphony of the Night, best Castlevania. This is still my favorite. This is Bloodlines here on the Sega Genesis. I'm continuing. It plays well. Again, the system is playing well. It's doing everything I need it to do for my gaming experience. I'm really not having much for issues. In this game, actually, it was more forgiving. Believe it or not, a Castlevania game, more forgiving. Uh, it was more forgiving than most of the games I played, so I found this one to actually be better than X-Men, but hey, the system's still taking it like a champ, so let's move forward. Now, yes, generally I don't throw in two games from the same series in a review like this, but I had to throw in some Ninja Turtles on NES just to show you. I don't have any Famicom games, but for NES US version, can do it. I take more hits there and whatnot than I usually do, but this is again an issue with the controller because the controller it takes getting used to. There is a learning curve to this system, but it's emulating correctly. It's playing back the games just right, so hey, no real complaints here. And as our final test for this review, Chippendale's Rescue Rangers. Definitely a fun game, definitely an overlooked game. Um, Again, the Retron is doing what I needed to. It's taking these games like a champ. It's just the only problem I have still is with that down once in a while, because there are times where the game just it's not the controller. You're pulling it straight down, and it's not going down quite as well as you hope. But other than that, though, it's taking it like a champ. There's not much more I can say here. You're seeing it. Now, if you want to hook up your classic controllers, you can do that, and that might make it more comfortable for you if you have something custom, but overall, this system is just working.
So is the Retron the right system for you? What do you think? For me, I enjoy the fact that it did not have HDCP. So that means I could just record my old gameplays directly to it. I'm going to be using this for all my gameplay recordings and streamings and whatnot. It's a far cry better because the Retron 3 actually had an output issue where it would output to something that most of my systems actually couldn't, most of my recording systems just couldn't pick up a clean signal from it. So I had to augment it, which really sucked. But given that the Retron 3 does a great job, beautiful. Thing I don't like though is it does upscale the games. So once it upscales, then you're kind of sitting there and you're kind of like, ick. Because the games don't look nearly as good as they did on their original format for their times. At least not NES games. NES games, any of the Game Boy games, those had issues. Genesis games are hit or miss, depending on the title. Things get grainy when they get upscaled, and we're dealing with high definition and stuff that was meant for a CRT 480i television, right? So all that to say, I still like my Retron. It still is a great system. I would recommend this one. I would recommend this one strongly. I mean, if you are a retro gaming aficionado, yes. Downside, price is actually fairly steep. This one actually went for 160. The guys gave me a deal on it, so bravo. But still, 160 bucks to play all your old games, whereas you could buy the individual consoles for less. It's a hard sell. And then with the controllers, once the battery's dead, you pretty much have to buy a new controller. unless you can find a way to replace those batteries, which I have not yet. So it is an expensive initial buy-in, but an overall system is an overall package for working. Hey, I do recommend this one. This is actually a great system, and given the fact that you can patch it as well, they do release updates for it as new games are found to be incompatible. That's great. They're still supporting this. It is a solid console, and yes, I would recommend the Retron 5. I definitely would. MoralGamer here. Where do you play your retro games? You tried the Retron 5? How about 3 or 2? Or even the Retron? Comments below as always, and don't forget we got a support link too, helps us out. And we look forward to catching you next time with our next review. Thanks for watching.